I'm Mike,
And I'm Amber. Welcome to the Covenant Chronicles,
where we tell you the truth about relationships,
giving you the tools to build the foundation you always needed. Welcome back to the Covenant Chronicles.
Sup, y'all?
I was going to be like, and before Michael can say anything, he says hello. But I didn't get there in time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all good. What are we talking about today?
Apparently we're talking about nervous system regulation, right?
What is a dysregulated nervous system?
Oh.
Yeah.
There we go.
So if you do a quick Google search, according to the good old Google machine, dysregulated nervous system is an imbalance between the sympathetic, which is your fight or flight, and the parasympathetic, which is your rest and digest systems, where the body remains in a chronic state of stress, high alert, or shutdown, even without immediate danger. It often manifests as anxiety, burnout, chronic pain, and trouble concentrating.
Mm-hmm.
Which, I mean, those symptoms are like every ailment ever on WebMD.
I don't know. My nervous system was in extreme dysregulation on Friday, so
yeah,
it was kind of like that.
Well, and that's why I wanted to talk about this, because you see this so often in relationships, especially in which the woman is in this constant state of dysregulation and she adapts to it over time. And it becomes this, I guess, normalcy, if you will. And you see these like symptoms which manifest in other ways, right? So we commonly see things such as, the overstimulation can be a sign of that, like when they're, feeling very touched out, or the overstimulation of noises, right?
Yeah.
You see this where sometimes, and there is things that can just be caused by this in general, right? But things like chewing noises, you're sitting down at the dinner table with your family and the noise of people chewing can set you off, right? And there's a word for that. What I would say is more often than not, though, there's all these like labels and symptoms, and the doctors want to basically create these ailments, if you will, and say, oh, well, you have this, or, oh, you have that condition, you have this and that. It's amazing how many of those conditions are symptoms of a dysregulated nervous system. And when you can come to a place of regulation, they disappear.
Mm-hmm.
And we see this so often inside of relationships in which, especially when a woman is forced to be in her masculine frame so often, that it becomes this place of normalcy for her. And then because she is in such a place, then there's these symptoms like we talked about, right? The being touched out, the noise things, the sometimes it can manifest as like simple annoyances, like stuff just setting you off. And what tends to happen is that we want to normalize these things, right? So we tend to, kind of like we talked about in the last podcast, about where we take these like worldly views, right? And we say, oh, well, it's just normal. And we start telling ourselves this garbage, right?
Yeah.
And then when you start understanding that your nervous system is pretty much in charge of kind of metering the regulation or the communication between neurons, which can be, chemical communication, it can be electrical communication. It plays into part your memories that trigger emotions, all these sort of things. You start understanding why a dysregulated nervous system can lead to, chronic illness, or you feel getting sick all the time, or feeling like you're getting sick all the time, or all these other, things. And you start seeing where, the stress factor of that and your nervous system being in this constant place creates these negative effects, right? And going back to, I believe we talked about it on one of the previous podcasts, but where Harvard had actually done a study on basically what the single most, or the biggest factor in what your health looks like at age 80, and it's your relationships basically at age 50, right? And that can be your intimate relationship with your spouse, or it can be, your close friends. I mean, all of them play a factor, and it had to do with the stress regulation, essentially, and the effect that your relationship and the health of your relationship can play on that. And when you start examining that, you start understanding that, your partner has a massive ability to influence uh basically your nervous system and its ability to regulate itself, and that has a direct connection in essentially how long you're going to live, or your health as you get older. It becomes more and more important for people to start analyzing their relationships early on, and starting to see these trends and these patterns, and understanding, okay, when I do this or I do that, right? When we don't hold a place for our wife to express her feelings or emotions, and she has to bottle them up, or we're not stepping up and handling stuff the way we need to. So therefore, she has to step into this place where she has to take things over. And now she feels like she's the man in the relationship, and you're just another one of her children. How all of this can play into effect of not just the healthy relationship, but the long-term health of the relationship, as well as physically the health of each individual.
Yeah. So I have like a rabbit hole that I went into this weekend, Friday. I kind of talked about it on the last podcast, but the way I talked about it on the last podcast is a little different than how it like looked for me when I had this like realization. So I honestly was just struggling with emotions last week, like feeling super overwhelmed by stuff, but not even 100% understanding why I was feeling overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
And then got to like Friday, and I told you, like, my nervous system is completely dysregulated today. Like, I just feel super overwhelmed, and I don't even know why, really. And I spent a majority of the day, like, honestly in fight or flight and like freak out mode. And I could not figure out why, and started like almost like bringing up previous patterns that I had, that I felt like I had worked through, and they weren't really a thing anymore, but like they were coming up, and I was freaking out about them, and like my system like kind of went into shutdown and just started freaking out.
Mm-hmm.
And I multiple times that day had like I just like got down on the floor and like just started praying about it, and like, I don't know what's going on, like, can you help me understand, because I really don't understand why I feel the way that I feel right now, and why I'm feeling these things, and all of this stuff. And anyways, fast forward a little bit in the day, and we had gone to Shabbat that night at our friend's house, and uh, someone was talking, and they were talking about like quitting chewing tobacco, basically.
Mhm.
And it became this conversation of like one of the guys used to chew, and someone that he knew just like quit cold turkey. And he essentially was like, well, how did you do that? Like, I want to know how you just stopped. And the guy told him that he just like bought an unopened can of it and put it in his pocket and decided, like, anytime I feel like I want to chew, I'm going to take it out and look at it and say, I control you, you don't control me. And after that, he didn't need it anymore. And um anyways, there was a little bit more discussion about that, but fast forward a little more and we got home that night and I was in the shower, and suddenly it just like all clicked and made sense. Like, I was letting past things that I worked through dysregulate me, and I was letting it control me.
Mm.
I was not controlling it. And then it got me into this like thinking of, if I'm not controlling my emotions, then who is controlling them?
Mm.
And that kind of led me down this like, if God has worked you through something and you feel like you've worked through it and that's not a thing anymore, but suddenly it's popped up again and you're having to like work through the same thing again, who's in control of that?
Mm.
It's probably the enemy, right? Trying to see what he can bring back into your life that you've already gotten rid of, that God has already like helped you work through.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was just this like, holy cow, like I just figured this out. And I even like came to bed with you after and was like, I just figured it out. Like, it all just makes sense now.
Mm.
And I was like, I'm in control of it. It doesn't control me. And since then, like, my nervous system has been regulated. I don't think I've felt anxiety at all since then. Like, I've just been, and anytime something like tries to pop back up, I'm like, nope, I control it. It doesn't control me.
You know, I think that brings up a good point too, because we constantly talk about, basically the internal conversations that we have with ourselves and how influential those are in our lives, right? And how much of a difference they make. And then when you connect that to like what you were just saying about, when you actually started having this internal fight almost of trying to regulate your nervous system and you being, attacked over here and trying to bring up old stuff, how often do we fall into that trap and start telling ourselves the old story that we've let go?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And when you look at things in the Bible and the way that the enemy attacks you, right? It's this constant attack of like the identity that you have assumed, right? So when you assume that identity, right? Galatians 2:20, it's no longer I who lives, he who lives in me. When you assume that identity and you step forward in your life, the way that the enemy is going to call that into question is by questioning that identity,
Yep.
right? He did it from the very beginning.
And that's what I told you I was struggling with most, was my identity last week.
Yeah. And it's funny that was, and how simple of a thing that can be that quickly spirals out of control just by a small thing, right? And the enemy did it in the very beginning in the garden when he said, well, instead of, when you read the Bible, Adam and Eve were made in the image of man or of God, right?
Yep.
Initially, or Adam was made in the image of God. Of
Yeah.
course, Eve was made in his image. But the enemy says, well, hey, if you eat the fruit, then you will be like God.
Mm-hmm.
You were already made in the image,
Yeah.
right? And then you see this too, like when Jesus is in the desert and the enemy is challenging him, right? Well, if you are really the Son of God, why don't you do this? If you were really this,
Yeah.
right? And you saw the enemy at work in when we talk about like Judas, right? And him being possessed by the enemy, a lot of this story makes sense when you see this, like, well, if he's the Son of God, like he can just come off the cross, he'll do all the right.
Yeah.
And you see this over and over in this consistent theme in which he's going to attack your identity. And what's so interesting about this is when you look at it in the garden, right? Did he go to Adam and be like, okay, let me challenge him? No, he did it to the
Eve.
wife. He did it to Eve to challenge her identity, to twist her identity. And then because he struggled, you know, Adam sat idly by. When you break down what actually happened, you break down the original Hebrew and stuff. It wasn't like she snuck off and did it behind his back. No, he sat idly by while this happened,
Yeah.
right? What do you think happens inside of a marriage, inside of a relationship, right? When we talk about the nervous system being dysregulated and he challenges her identity, right? And the natural femininity that she has and where, she is at peace and she feels protected and he attacks these things, right? And
Yeah.
he twists these things. And when a man sits idly by and allows that to happen, then that's when you see the dysregulation, right? And when the dysregulation comes, it puts you on this hamster wheel of basically just continuing to snowball out of control, right? To the point of, like you said, like where all this like stuff started coming up and all this past stuff started coming up for you and it started flooding in,
Yeah.
right? And it was like we had to come together and say, hey, and put a stop to it, right? And you came to that realization of like, hey, this is an attack, right? But how often do we see that where a man sits idly by in that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the question is, okay, well, what does that look like inside of a relationship?
Well, I guess I should maybe put context earlier in the day too, because you actually did do a good job with that. Like earlier in the day on Friday, when I was feeling super dysregulated and these patterns started to come up, there was a time that an old pattern came up that I was like, why is he not responding to me? Why have I not heard from him? What is going on? Is he like, just like all these things.
Mm-hmm.
And I called you at one point and was like, what are you doing? Like, why are you not communicating with me? What are you doing right now? And you were just like, I'm talking to my dad. I was
I
like,
didn't have my phone.
I
Well,
was like, oh, okay. Maybe just ignore me because I'm being crazy.
yeah.
And you were like, okay.
But that's so I want to touch on that though, right? Because we talk about how does this look in relationships, right? It looks like that right there, right? Is that your normal state? Do you care? Let me rephrase. Do you harass me about where I am or if I take a while to text back or any of these things on a normal basis?
No.
Absolutely not,
Yeah.
right? But that right there, right? And so let's play this scenario out in a typical relationship. Something happens, the enemy attacks your identity. You question it. Then that scenario happens.
Yeah.
What are you doing? Why are you not responding to me? Why are you not texting me back? Why are you not? And it's funny because the joke that you see online on social media about, guys, and it's like, oh, why is he not responding back to me? He's probably with some other chick right now. And then he's just like off doing the dumbest, silliest thing, that like just being a total space cadet, right?
Mm.
There are scenarios, of course, that you see infidelity, but the vast majority of the time that situation or that meme, whatever you want to call it, is the truth, right? And so this is how that looks inside of a relationship. And then what does the guy do? Well, he gets defensive because his internal conversation is, golly, I can't get any space from her. She's on top of me all the time. She's always harassing me. She's da 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 da.
Yeah.
Right. And then when you call and that phone call happens, right, I react and I'm like, dude, can you just leave me alone? Like, I'm not doing anything. Like, why are you like, holy crap, right?
Yeah.
And then that sets you off.
Yeah.
And then it becomes a spiral. And then pretty soon we're arguing. And now I want even more distance. And you're pissed off because, well, now I'm really ignoring you. And then it turns into this thing, right?
Mm.
And what's so interesting about that is it all started with the enemy questioning your identity and allowing these past memories to start to trickle in and mess with your emotions,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because keep in mind, the same part of your nervous system that's responsible for memories is responsible for your emotions.
Yeah.
So then it starts throwing off your emotions, and then your system starts to get all wishy-washy and not know what it wants to do here. And then you go over here and something happens, right? And the man gets defensive. Instead of protecting her, instead of doing his job in the garden, he's going to sit idly by and let this attack happen and feed it.
Yeah.
Right. And so we talk about this and it's like, well, how does that look? When you talk about dysregulation inside for her nervous system, and the man's supposed to be doing what he's supposed to and protecting the garden and working in the garden and protecting her from the enemy and the enemy attacking these things. That's how that looks.
Yeah.
Right. Because, and here's the thing, the reality is how many women have been through something at some point in their life that gives them justification of saying, well, this one time, this one guy, or, my ex, or whatever the case may be, and when he wouldn't respond, he was with somebody else, or whatever the case is, right?
Yeah.
Maybe it's in your relationship. Maybe it's in the past. Maybe that happened inside of your relationship 2, 3, 5, 10 years ago, right?
Yeah.
But here's the thing. If the enemy knows that it works, he's going to push the repeat button over and over and over because it keeps working,
Yeah.
right? So here's a real life example of how that looks and how things were handled differently, right?
Yeah.
I didn't freak out on you. I didn't get upset. I didn't whatever. You said the things you said about, oh, just ignore me. Maybe I'm being crazy, whatever. And then you basically text me and said, something to the effect of, hey, I didn't mean that to come across like this. I really when I said, just ignore me, I'm realizing that I'm whatever. Right.
Yeah.
But it was the me not reacting to you that allowed you to take a second look at that situation. And then when I headed home, instead of engaging or being reactive or all this stuff, I just came home and I held you.
Yeah.
right? And then that allowed you the time of like, did that solve everything right in the moment? No. But did it allow you time to kind of take a breath and acknowledge that, hey, something's going on here? Yes.
Yeah.
And then it allowed you the space to figure this out, that you were being attacked, and being able to put your own guard up, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes what we don't realize is the key to regulating the nervous system is in the simple acts of not reacting. It's in the simple acts of just holding you for a minute and saying, hey, it's okay, right?
Yeah.
It's in these simple acts that puts the guard up and stops allowing the enemy to push the button, because his whole goal is to divide you two, right? We talked about that in all the other ways. We talked about that in the last podcast and some of the other ways that he does this. But
Yeah.
if this is what his goal is to divide you, and he can make you question yourself and let your nervous system get out of whack and make you or get you to the point where you're going to say some stuff and then get me to react to that, to where we're in this like snowball or domino of like just fighting over nothing at this point.
Yeah.
Right? Then he succeeded.
Right.
And that's the thing, is that when we talk about relationships and people go, oh, I wish that, it's incredible what you guys have. And, I wish we could figure it out like you and this and that. And we've said it 1,000 times before, but it's not about perfection. It's about these small changes, the changes to our internal conversation, the things that we're telling ourselves. And even in that moment, right, of instead of reacting to you or even telling myself like, what is wrong with her? Like, I don't know what she's got going on or anything of that nature, right? Just acknowledging, she's really struggling right now. She just needs somebody to hold her.
Yeah.
Right. And even if that's not possible because of the physical distance, when it is possible, coming and just holding you and not being reactive or keeping this crap going or whatever. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's, I told that story to like kind of show like really that's the state that you want to get to, is being able to be like, hey, that emotion, that thing doesn't control me. I control it. Because you want to get to that place of like not allowing the enemy to control you. Now, I will say, like, I understand that if you're in the beginning stages of like healing things inside yourself, just telling yourself that's probably not going to work. And I get that. And I, I want to acknowledge that. But the beginning stages of like being able to get to that point is just recognizing what's happening in that moment.
Yeah.
And even being able to just recognize at all that you feel dysregulated and then being able to communicate that with your partner. Because I think for years of my life, I didn't even realize that the state that I was living in on a daily basis was dysregulation. Like I thought that was normal, even though I felt like whatever inside. I just thought that that was normal.
Right.
And it wasn't until I started trying to heal myself that I understood, oh, that feeling is a signal that like this is not normal.
Right. Well, and look at like you said, you didn't even understand the path or the state that you were in. And, you fell into this trap and the environment, right? When we talk about it being the man's job to till and work the garden and be a protector, right?
Yeah.
How were you treated at that time? Well, you were told that you have issues. You were told that you're depressed. You were told, hey, take these pills and they'll make you feel okay, right?
Yeah.
And it was like you just got more and more numb is really what it was,
Yeah.
right? And then you took pills to make you even more numb, right? Not drug pills. I mean, antidepressants or whatever,
Yeah.
not actual opioids or anything
I
of that
actually
nature.
went into a conversation with Camille about this the other day because I really didn't, people are always like, oh, I don't want to take anxiety medicine because I'll feel numb. And I used to be the person that was like, that's ridiculous. I didn't feel numb. I don't feel numb like when I was taking them, but I stopped taking them and realized that I actually wasn't feeling,
Mm-hmm. Or
and I
having
couldn't
emotions.
process my emotions. I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't even really understand what my emotions were. And now, like, if we have this conversation a lot, but like, if I feel emotional about something, it's going to have to come out.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I'm just going to have to cry about it for a minute. Sometimes it's longer than that, but like, I've
Yeah.
got to get it out and then I'm good.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize that before when I really wasn't
Right.
feeling things.
And that's how often do people fall into that trap though, right? And then the guy who's not operating where he needs to be just goes with the flow. He stands idly by, just like when the enemy,
Yeah.
got Eve to take a bite in the garden, right? The
Yeah.
same thing. He challenges the identity, he twists it up. The world tells you that you need pills to numb yourself, or that you need this to numb yourself, or you need that, or oh, this is just normal. You're stressed because you have kids. You're stressed because life. You're stressed because blah 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 blah, right?
Yeah.
Or you're being attacked and it's working,
Yeah.
right? Or your nervous system is dysregulated and all out of whack, and the enemy is using that to isolate you. Because when you really think about it, right? Like, what state does the wife go in, especially when she has kids, right? The enemy isolates her,
Yeah.
right? Just like in the garden, just like what he did. And Adam, or the husband, sits here idly by and watches it happen
Yeah.
and just lets it happen,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And we see it over and over and over inside of relationships. And then it's even more interesting because you'll see these situations in which the couple will tell themselves these things, right? Or like we talked about with the internal conversations, right? We talked about the last one when we talked about the fun and the flirtiness and the intimacy and how the enemy tries to, right? His goal is to isolate,
Yeah.
right? Because keep in mind, one of the only reasons, right? Not the only, but one of the only, because there's only a couple reasons for divorce, is abandonment.
Mm-hmm.
So if he can create isolation and create a situation in which your partner abandons you,
Mm-hmm.
well, there you go.
That's
Right?
emotionally and physically, just so we're all aware.
Yeah. Emotionally and 100%.
Yeah.
Emotionally, physically, spiritually, right? All of the above.
Yeah.
But what does the Bible say, right? God hates divorce.
Mm-hmm.
So the enemy is working through this back channel where he's just, and here's the thing. It's not the floodgates opening. It's not this big, it's the slow drip of the faucet, right? The drip,
Yeah.
drip, drip. And it, like we said, it creates this pattern of like, she questions her identity. Slowly, the nervous system gets out of whack. Then she starts doing these things. Then he is not protecting their relationship, so he reacts. Then it turns into a fight, and then the division, and you just keep getting worse and worse and worse. And then next thing you know, you guys are roommates.
Yeah.
You're not being intimate. You're not having sex. You're not doing any of this stuff.
Yeah.
And then before you know it, you're 7 years in, 10 years in, 15 years in, and you're looking at divorce because you're in this bad place, right? And then half the time you go, you see a counselor, you see a therapist, which statistically, I think it's over 90% still end in divorce, right?
Yeah.
It's at least 80 for sure. And it's been a while since I've looked up the statistics, so I don't want to say for sure it's over 90, but it's over 80% for sure, right? And when you look at that, you're like, well, how? They're going to get help. Well, because the Bible tells us it's not a battle of flesh and blood.
Yeah.
It's a spiritual battle. And you go see somebody that doesn't understand that lets you just complain and continue to tell this horrible story about yourself or your partner, and they barely do anything besides validate that story, as opposed to telling you, stop telling yourself this story,
Yeah.
right? And let's shift this around.
Yeah.
But here's these things, right? When people ask, or they hear these things, right? And I would say that even in the realm of, coaching, mentoring, actual relationship, specific counselors, therapists, whatever you want to call it, books, seminars, all this education, there is not a great job and emphasis put on, one, the internal conversations, but two, what do these things look like, right?
Yeah.
Oh, go be a man. Oh, her nervous system is dysregulated, right? And these are like the next level, right? Because the base level of like trying to quote unquote help is, well, we're just going to validate this horrible story that you're saying, right? And that's supposed to help somehow. And then they wonder why there's this massive like failure rate still. And then the next level is, well, he needs to go be a man. He needs to worry about himself. And, she needs to do this. And okay, but what does that look like? Where does that even come from, right? How
Yeah.
can you even fix that if you have no idea how it or where it comes from? And the truth is, it's not a battle of flesh and blood. It is a spiritual battle. And when you understand these things and you can see, right, we just gave an example in our relationship of how the enemy tried to attack us and how this looks very different for most people. It looked very different in the beginning of our relationship. It looked very different in our past relationships, right?
Yeah.
Because we fell into those worldly traps and the traps that the enemy lays, right? And I think of it, I think of it a lot like Mario, right? When we play Mario with the kids and on the Switch or whatever, and we're playing the little deal, and you can set the little traps to steal your stars or steal, coins from the other players, right? You can set
Yeah.
this trap, and that's exactly what he's doing through the track of life, right?
Mm.
And he sets these little traps,
Yeah.
and you fall into them, and you end up in this place of like, well, I don't know how we got here. And then you don't understand why this is, right? And you go seek help, and you're like we talked about. Then you're validated of these horrible stories, and then you go seek a little bit better help, and then it's like, well, yeah, here's the finish line. This is, you have to get to here, and there's no definition in between of why does this look this way?
Yeah.
How is this being, becoming these things? Well, how does your nervous system get dysregulated? Well, for one, the man's not doing what he should. But how does that look? looks like him sitting idly by. It looks like him being passive. And when you think about that and that connection between that and, a lot of like the worldly advice of like him really focusing on stepping up, right? Being better physically, mentally, financially, all these things, right? And focusing on all of this stuff, it's kind of a mask of like, the thing is he's built to be the protector, right?
Yeah.
They have that part of it right, but it's not just the physical, the financial, these sort of things. It is the most important is the spiritual protector,
Yeah.
right? And not allowing the enemy to come into his home and set up camp, because he will if you open that door.
You know what else is like massively important in that?
I'm sure you're going to tell me.
Gratitude.
Yes.
It just popped into my brain because I was watching a video earlier where the guy was talking about how like gratitude in the spiritual realm is like the enemy hates that.
Mm-hmm.
He hates whenever you are giving gratitude and praise to God, even in times of hardship.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like there's a scent or a smell that you give off in that realm when you're being grateful, and they don't like that.
Yeah.
Right? And it's, I'm sure there will be people that listen and that's crazy, but like it is talked about in the Bible, and he was talking about how David talked about his, scent whenever he was full of gratitude and stuff. But anyways, my point being, if you start giving gratitude whenever you feel dysregulated, it's also a really great way to regulate your nervous system. Just giving praise. Like and that was something that I actually did do on Friday, because I started out being frantic, like I don't know what's happening, and blah, 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 and then all of a sudden I was like, wait, stop. Like I might feel dysregulated right now, and I might not know what's happening right now, but I'm going to start giving gratitude and praise for the things that are happening. And for, even though I feel overwhelmed in this moment, like I'm grateful for this and this and this and this and this, and like it didn't instantly shift it, but like I said, by the end of the day, like I had it figured out.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because you talked about even in the hardships, right? Being thankful and having gratitude. One of our close friends says it all the time, and praise leads to battle, right? And like we talked about, it's not a battle of flesh and blood, right? It's a spiritual battle. You want to win, praise, right?
Yeah.
You want to change your marriage. You want to help lead better to pull her nervous system out of this dysregulation. When's the last time you prayed thankfulness over your wife right after a fight? You guys are fighting and you're not talking. And instead of sitting there and replaying all this garbage in your head about everything that went wrong and how she did X, Y, and Z, when's the last time you just sat down and prayed how thankful you are for her?
Yeah. Probably make a massive difference.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Right? Think about like, and that's the thing is like, we don't say this as like this make-believe thing. Like we've done that, right?
Yeah.
Like been in a disagreement and been like, I just want you to know I appreciate you.
Yeah.
Right? I just want you to know I love you. Right?
Yeah.
And it shifts the whole dynamic. And that's the thing is, when's the last time you've done that? Right? You want to start winning the battle, you start with praise.
Yeah.
And it's being thankful for that person.
Yeah.
Every day, right? You know, one of our close friends, they were just texting me today, and they had this aha moment about it was kind of their realization of love isn't a feeling, right? It's a choice. It's this choosing a covenant every day,
Yeah.
right? And it was kind of that situation of choosing that when you're like, I love you, or I love this person, I love my spouse, I love my wife, I love my husband. That is it's not just you being like, hey, I love you. It's I'm choosing you. I'm choosing this covenant, right?
Yeah.
Just like the Bible talks about, right? Love your wife the way Jesus loved the church, right? Are you doing that?
Yeah.
Because there was times that Jesus was frustrated as heck. Let's not forget, dude was turning over tables in the temple, right?
Yeah.
But he still chose to love the people,
Yeah.
right? And are you doing that in your relationship, right? He's being crucified, and he says, forgive them, for they not know what they do.
Yeah.
Are you doing that in your marriage? When you're arguing, when you realize, when you stop looking at these things that your spouse is doing, that your wife is doing, as her being unreasonable or this or that or whatever other crap that you're telling yourself, and you realize the enemy is attacking, and it's my job as the man to handle this and to protect my wife, because I chose to marry her. I chose to be in a covenant with her.
Yeah.
So it's my job to protect her and to protect my home from the spiritual attack.
Yeah.
And it starts by praise. There's a lot to unpack there.
I feel like we went deeper than probably you expected when you first started this podcast than you heard what we were talking about. But
Yeah.
it was a lot of good stuff. And hopefully you take away, like, just start small. Like, if you are literally in the beginning stages of trying to regulate your nervous system, start small. Acknowledge what's happening. Then maybe take some time to thank God for allowing you to be able to notice that this is happening with your nervous system.
Well, and having that understanding that this is an attack.
Yeah.
Right? Now, it might not be this moment. This may have been the domino that was created from the attack, right?
Yeah.
But understanding that, like, the enemy's purpose is to drive disconnection, to drive you and your spouse apart, and to make you question your identity.
Yeah.
So when you look at it from that view, right?
Yeah.
And we've talked about it before. You open that door, right? So take ownership for it. Take ownership for that. Lead with praise. And like you said, even starting small, right? Hey, thanks for giving me this understanding. Thanks for giving me this wisdom, right? Thank you for being with me in this, Lord, whatever that looks like.
Yeah. Yep.
So what is their task for this week? That's a good challenge right there.
Yeah.
Well, before we actually get into that, there is a slight change. So we have talked about it before, but the covenant community under school, SKOOL, the school community, is called Covenant Community. That is the official Covenant Chronicles school community. There is a ton of stuff in there. There's a bunch of free resources for you that will do wonders for your relationship. Additionally, there's paid tiers for not only more resources, the first tier, the premium tier. There's a relationship reset course that will help restart your relationship. We also do pre-recorded Q&As, so questions that we commonly see, questions from the community, questions that we hear from friends or people around us, or just people we encounter. We'll actually talk about those questions. There's a even higher tier where we'll actually do once a month live calls for you to actually ask questions, for us to coach you through those things, that sort of stuff. And that higher tier will have those replays as well. And there's some other benefits to that. But even if you just join for the free community, there is a 1-year long Bible study to do with your spouse that will deep dive, and I promise you it will till up all of the soil. If you do nothing else, I would highly encourage you to go do this year long. It's a weekly, hey, here's week 1, here's week 2, basically year long Bible study with your spouse.
Mm-hmm.
Go through it. Take the free resources, print them out, go spend some time in your Bible with your spouse, and break these things down, because I promise you, you will completely look at the Bible differently. You will look at your relationship, your marriage differently if you do that. And with that being said, we're going to even take it a step further, and we will probably start doing one of the 2 podcasts a week where we'll actually talk about this, because we will go through, we don't just make these things up, we actually use them. We will actually be going through the Bible study together. Amber and I will. We use them in our small groups and other things. And essentially what I'm getting at is we will also talk about these things once a week on one of the podcasts and stuff that we went through. So use this resource. If nothing else, go use the free resource, because I promise you, if you do, it will massively change your relationship. And then you can even hear our insights on the podcast about this Bible study.
Yeah.
So maybe that's what they do. They go join the school community.
Yeah.
That's your task for this week. Go join the school community and start the Bible study. It is literally free.
Yeah.
It's free to create a school account. You download the app on your phone. You create the account. You go search Covenant Community. You'll see it on there. You join it. And then under the classroom, it is, I believe, called the Foundation or Foundations. The Foundations. Anyways, you go into that, and it is a year-long Bible study for you and your spouse.
Yeah. So go do that. I was going to say
Foundations. I lied. Covenant Foundations.
Okay.
I had that, yeah.
I was going to say just check in with yourself and notice how you're feeling in this moment. Notice, if you have some tension or you're holding some stuff, and just take a moment to notice what's happening in your nervous system, and check in and see if you feel like you need some regulation, and start there this week.
Mm-hmm. That's a good one.
Yeah. Along with going and joining school. But well, that is all for now.
That's it.
That's all you get.
All right, guys. Until next time.
Okay, bye.
Bye.